So do you remember the cueing?
Spread the floor.
Spread the floor.
Pushing down.
Yep.
And
tighten,
core tight.
tighten the core. So you squeeze your abdomen like I'm about to punch you in the stomach. You spread the earth underneath you. And you pull down on your hands. Nice.
Ooh. Oh, it's gonna get weird today. It's gonna get weird.
1 week. 1 week till it's all over this year.
Yeah, I'm like 1 week post show, 1 week out from the next show. We're weird.
Yeah, it's that
Super.
it's that gap, that limbo gap. Because you're not refeeding, but you're not.
No, but I did have my 8-day out mock load yesterday, which is part of why my body's fighting me. So she's like, okay, it was double. I know we don't like focusing on calories, right? But double, possibly more than double the total calorie count, more than 3 times the amount of carbs from one day to the next. And then now today, I'm lower than I was on Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's a boo, boo, boo.
Your body and mind are going to be very happy when you can eat steady meals again.
Oh.
We're 8 days away from that.
Oh, we're so close. We're so close.
You can start eating steady meals, taper them back up.
Get to be a person
Get
again.
some body fat back so it doesn't hurt when you sit down.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
So your legs don't go numb when you sit down on anything.
So my feet, even my feet are like, can we get a little cushion?
Sore, right?
Just like a little cushion, please.
Yeah, it's tough.
But yeah, we're right there. We're right there. We just gotta bring something nice to Tampa.
Are you ready to add weight or?
Yeah, let's start with a plate. See how that moves. 'Cause I am cold, but I'm not feeling stiff. So that is good news.
That's fun. We'll actually talk about that. Because when I mentioned at the beginning that so many influencers are wrong about glutes, a big portion of what they don't understand is that the glute max has more interaction directly with connective tissue than most muscles. And you just said you don't feel stiff, and that is part of the whole circle.
Okay.
So we'll get to that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Interest peaked.
Yep. Because there's a lot of anatomy we need to make sense of before we can understand how the glutes actually function. So it's like, I'm not just going to say they're wrong. I'm going to teach you where the muscles attach, how everything functions, and then I'm not going to say they're wrong. You'll see it.
All right. Yeah, buddy.
All right. So a reminder for our viewers, the cueing that we use here is the first thing you're going to do is try to pull your feet apart like you're splitting the earth apart. And it's not separating the knees, it's trying to pull the feet apart. And then going upward at the core in the stomach region, you want to tighten and engage. We're not engaging against any specific targeted resistance because you're getting compressed, but the idea is like tighten your stomach as if you're about to get hit, like you're preparing for something. And then the final cue is to pull your arms downward as if you were doing a lat pull on a cable where you're pulling straight down. So the purpose of that, vaguely speaking, we'll get into more detail, from the top down now, pulling down activates the lats, and the lats have a connection to the thoracolumbar fascia, and the thoracolumbar fascia has an attachment to the glute max. And then the core, you want to activate and engage the core because the obliques have a huge influence and direct connection to the glutes also. And then going down from there, the purpose of separating your feet, trying to spread the earth as we call it, is to create tension along the IT band and essentially the outer plane of fascia, because that's where the glute max attaches. and we'll get into more detail of each of those, but those are the vague principles. Lat engagement, oblique engagement, tightening the outer portion of your thigh fascia, because then you're creating rigidity above and you're creating rigidity below where the glute anchors. So if you're pulling from two rigid components, you have better force production and you have better force transmission. So if either one of those were slack, you have to pull the slack out before you can get force production and force transmission. So if you pre-tense both sides of it, it's pulling from above and pulling from below on rigid surfaces. So it's just overall better force production and way better force transmission, which is the name of the game. Because like your glute can contract really hard, but if it's contracting against connective tissue that's moving, it's not moving you, it's just moving your connective tissue. So the whole idea is for the force generated by the muscle to actually transfer into the bony structure to move the joint. But since the glute doesn't attach hugely to the bone below it, it has good bony attachment on the pelvis, but not good bony attachment on the femur. So you want to make all the fascial structures as rigid as possible, so then it's kind of like mimicking pulling on a bone surface. Does that make sense?
Can you speak a little bit to how that difference impacts the way that you're like breaking down the glute muscle specifically, like versus like the pulling on, you know, loose connective tissue versus pulling on something that's more rigid?
So the glute max primary anchor it's defined as the fascia lata collectively. So if you imagine your quad, your hamstrings, and then your adductors, if you pull a big sleeve of connective tissue over the top, that's the fascia lata.
I really like that image.
Yeah. And then the outer portion of it is reinforced with an enormous thickening, which is called the IT band. So the IT band is not a independent structure. It's part of the accumulative fascia lata structure. And so it's a reinforcement on the outside because that's where the glute max muscles become continuous on the outer portion. So that thickening is to create a stronger anchor for the glute to pull against. Because if the glute is just pulling, it's going to roll your fascia around you. So if you can make that fascia more rigid, which the vastus lateralis participates in that, the glute med, glute min, TFL can pull tension that helps create a more rigid component. And if you can make that as tight as possible, then it's similar to pulling on the bone.
Okay.
But if it's loose, if you imagine like pulling on like somebody's belt, if the belt is slack, you're not pulling them until the belt comes taut.
Okay.
So
you
the
just
idea,
like have an extra step basically before you're getting to your target.
Yeah, because the glute max is going to pull the IT band, and if the IT band is not rigid, it's going to just pull it kind of posteriorly. You can kind of see how like your skin and your fascia move. So if the muscle's pulling on the connective tissue, it's kind of it could just roll it.
Yeah.
But if you make that really tight and kind of stiffen it out, like if I were holding like a strap like this, perfect example, I can't move the bag until the strap is slack.
Okay.
So if this is your IT band and the glute's pulling on it, you're not getting any movement. But if you slack it first and then you pull on it, now you're getting movement. So this is kind of the proxy for your IT band, this is the bone, and my hand and my arm is the glute. So if I'm pulling on IT band that's slack, I'm not moving the bag. If you slack it first, then you pull it, it moves immediately. So that's the idea of pulling the earth apart. And then above that, the upper portion of the glute max fascia is continuous with thoracolumbar fascia. And the thoracolumbar fascia is embedded with 9 or 10 other muscles. Most importantly, though, are the lat, the opposing lat, because we have a posterior diagonal, and then the oblique system. Because if you think about the glutes, they're oriented obliquely. They're not up and down. They're kind of this way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people misunderstand their function because of the oblique nature. They look at it as an external hip rotator, but that's not really, their function is more to counter this rotation.
Okay.
So your obliques are rotating your trunk against your pelvis, and it's the glute is the anchor from the pelvis to help that positioning.
Help stabilize that.
Because if you look at animals like horses or dogs or cats, they have similar musculature, but it's not nearly as obliquely oriented because their 4 legs are all on the ground, so they don't have rotational components in the air.
They're stable.
So their muscles don't have to be as obliquely oriented because their function doesn't include a huge amount of rotation in everyday functioning like ours does. Look at the shred on you, my goodness.
I'm laughing because the mic got, the magnet hit the machine. Okay.
So yeah,
So each has their specific role in anchoring, stabilizing, and taking that extra step out so you can
Yeah.
get right to work.
A phrase that we'll use, and I always, when I say we, I usually am talking about like my circle of people, which includes people who are educated in fascia. So a lot of the things we're talking about is defining stability or generating a stable environment from which muscles can pull. And a phrase I use commonly is, I always call it proximal stability. It's not always proximal, because proximal technically means closer to the middle, and sometimes the stability is a little bit more distal, but that's not the point. The point is, muscles are pulling on at least two different bones, or different connective tissue structures. There has to be two different points, otherwise it wouldn't be a muscle. So the points it's pulling on, if you can stabilize both of them, you're able to generate more force and transfer more force. So obviously the only part that can't be stable is the joint that you want to move, because if you're holding that joint stable, you're not generating movement.
Yeah.
But the idea is if your target is, for example, the glute max moves the hip joint. So if you think you want to, in this case, we're moving the knee also because we're squatting, but we want to stabilize any motion that doesn't include the hip extension, knee extension. So when you see people put bands around their knees and do this stuff for squatting, they're creating instability, which reduces force production and reduces force transmission of the target muscle in its target plane.
One more time on that one.
Yeah, so we're doing glute and quad today as part of it. So anytime you're training the glute in a squat, you're loading the weight in extension. So you want to stabilize the extension path as much as possible, because sure, the glutes can do a little bit of abduction, and maybe the glutes can do a little bit of external rotation, but the priority right now is extension, and we're loaded heavy on extension. So if you put a band around your knees right now and you're pulling them apart, you're creating an unstable environment at the hip joint. So the glute max isn't just extending, it's now thinking also about the stability factor. Or obviously not thinking about, but the glute max has to respond to the instability at the hip joint. So again, back to what we're doing. If you put your feet on the ground and spread the earth, you've now created rigidity and stability from your hip all the way to your foot. Now your glute max doesn't have to focus on stabilizing hip joint and can really focus on powering extension only. So collectively, proximal stability, not always proximal, but it's a good phrase. The idea is thinking about what joint needs to move, what direction it needs to move, and stabilizing everybody else as well as you can. And that falls back on what we do here. Pull the earth apart, contract your core, pull your arms down to contract your lats. And it sounds repetitive, but it is. Because one of the things that is true in human anatomy and physiology for bodybuilding is that it's not always exciting. It's repetitive, it's straightforward for a lot of stuff.
Whew. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not just our meals that get repetitive.
Yeah.
What we're doing in the gym gets repetitive too.
It's not always sexy from the outside. It's like, oh, you're doing squats again? It's like, yes, they're the best way to build quads and glutes together.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, again, yes.
And like, we'll simplify it even more. Muscle, there are 600 or 700, somewhere in the range of 600 to 700 muscles. Each one of them has its function. So it's like, if you're training the glute max, there's a finite amount of functions that muscle can produce. So a finite amount of functions means there's a finite amount of exercises. It's not going to be extravagant. It's not going to be that fun. The dominant is extension, and most dominant in extension with also knee extension. And that's not just one of those things where it's like, oh, they happen to work together. It's one of the phrases we use is, it's defined as a motor scheme. So for example, like when you walk, do you think about the motor pattern? If there's a curb and you have to step a little higher, do you think about the motor pattern? If you walk upstairs, do you think about it? But here, what we're doing, when I teach you new stuff, are you thinking about the motor patterns? So here, you're thinking more about it because the things we do here are not precisely like autonomic style functioning, but walking is something that you've been doing for 30 plus years. And it's also genetically coded.
Yeah.
That's how humans are, like, that's human locomotion, is physically walking on 2 feet. Obviously, you know, being capable is part of that. But assuming your body is capable, walking is an autonomic function from a DNA pattern. And the same thing of standing up.
I do notice though, like, so for instance, because the prep brain is so bad right now, I actually like have a hard time staying focused during my sets,
Yeah.
which is not normal for me, but prep brain. And when that happens, because I'm like, like when I go into those like quick periods of like really not thinking about it,
Yeah.
I notice that I don't, like, it doesn't feel like I'm getting as good of a set because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, because you need to focus on the motor pattern that you're doing, but if you don't, it falls out, right?
Yeah.
Because then you fall back onto generic, like, autonomic style functioning, which is fine, but it's not necessarily as specific as we want it to be. Because back to what I was saying, these motor patterns are, again, they're some of them are part of autonomic reflexes. So for example, if you touch a hot stove or something electric or something sharp, you don't pull your hand away. That is it's a reflex pathway that actually skips your conscious center. So the same thing is the reflex of stepping on something sharp. You'll pull your foot up, but the other leg has to go down to protect you from standing.
Yeah.
So that crossover pathway includes the exact pathway that we're using here. You're doing hip extension, knee extension, and technically they would call it ankle extension, but we call it plantar flexion to make it easy. But that whole thing is happening here. So it's an autonomic function that we're tapping into, and we call it a myofascial spiral. So it goes from your glute through your quad into your gastroc, and that motor pathway is a sequence that's predetermined. So your brain doesn't have to think like, okay, I have to do glute extension, I have to do quad extension, I have to do gastroc, plantar flexion. It's just like, oh, motor scheme, throw the whole thing through. So it's not something that you have to do like really crazy nuances, but adding in a little bit of these cues to create rigidity makes these pathways more efficient. So it's like if you squat, you're going to get quad and glute.
Yeah.
Depending on how your mechanics, how your body, how your fascial tension is, could determine which muscle ends up working more. That's not always specific to anatomy. It's not always specific to motor patterns. It could be fascial restriction that dictates motor patterns. Mm-hmm. Because back to what you said you don't feel stiff.
Right.
So I was going to bring that up, that stiff feeling. Like, think about how you wake up in the morning. Like, you feel a little bit stiff, your joints are kind of tight, and you need to do all this stuff to move around. And then think about if you did a full dynamic warm-up, right? You did your walking lunges, your trunk rotations, like your ankle rolls. How good and loose does your body feel after that? So the only difference there, a lot of people are like, oh, warm-up, get the blood flowing. Really what you're doing is moving the connective tissue. And there's a specific material called hyaluronic. You'll see it in your beauty products, hyaluronic acid. So the hyaluronic in the connective tissue is effectively the lubricant, but the lubricant has a variable viscosity. So if you leave it to settle, it'll settle into a higher viscosity, and you'll feel a little bit stiff.
Yeah.
But if you move it and you stir it, it gets really low viscosity. It's very like low. It's kind of like thin fluid, if you want to think of it that way. The difference between moving through air versus trying to move through water versus trying to move through like syrup. So if you don't move for a while, your hyaluronic becomes more viscous, so it'll be closer to like a syrup type. But if you stay moving and you move a lot like you're doing now it's going to be even thinner than water, so you feel really loose. And that's the component of the variable viscosity of the fascial system through the hyaluronic. And it's one of those things that some of these influencers like, fascia's not important. And it's like, interesting. The glute attaches to fascia. How is it not important?
Yeah.
And like, you feel stiff. When you move and warm up, you don't feel stiff anymore. All of that's in the connective tissue. How is it not important? Have you ever heard of proprioception? That's all in the connective tissue. How is it not important? The reflex pathways I just went over.
Yeah.
Those all happen through the fascia first. How is it not important?
Yeah,
and
that seems like pretty key to me.
Saying it's not important is a logical fallacy called argument from incredulity. The idea is, I don't understand it, therefore it can't be true. It's being incredulous and saying, I don't believe it because I can't understand it, and therefore I'm denying its relevance or denying the fact. It's like, well, you can deny it all you want, but it's real. This stuff matters. It matters more than anything.
Yeah, that's wild to me to say that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know anything about it, but I know it's not important. That's effectively what they're saying. And then it's funny because they'll fall back on stuff like, oh yeah, the old anatomy trains. I don't believe in that. It was like, yeah, okay, I don't need it. That's a protocol. That's not the basic science of the anatomy, physiology, biomechanics. That would be like saying, like old school P90X. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Like, P90X isn't a good workout program. Therefore, exercise is not important at all under any circumstance. And you'd be like, that's a crazy extrapolation. It's like, correct. Saying anatomy trains wasn't good for fascia doesn't mean fascia is not important. So prep brain reminders. Pull the earth apart. Pull the handles down and engage. Tighten your abs. Got more glute and fascia anatomy to drop after this set. Yes. How you feeling?
Ooh.
If you get lightheaded, calf raises.
Oh, that one felt nice. Let me.
Yep. Blow out the birthday candles. Yeah, I feel like I've said that in every video I've done so far. With 2 with Courtney, 2 with you. It's like when you're out of breath, it's not that you don't have enough breath in you. It's that you have too much CO2 in you, and you have to get it out of you.
I've been using that a lot when I'm doing my HIIT cardio.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm on there looking crazy. Like,
yeah. Carbon dioxide accumulation is what you're perceiving. You're not perceiving oxygen deficit because you can't.
Yeah. That's really interesting that it doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Or that we don't have that.
Yeah, it's an increase in CO2 that your brain is concerned about.
So
are we done here? Or?
Oops. Let's do one more set actually.
Nice.
That was just 2 working.
Nice.
So you want to go into more of the glute ham anatomy?
Yes. So the like we said
glute
before.
ham that you said, right?
Glute to IT band.
Glute to IT band.
So the glute max, like we said, anchors primarily on the IT band, but the IT band attaches below the knee on the tibia. It's called Gerdy's tubercle. It's somewhere. It's right. You could actually see, if I could get this to pop up enough, you could see it right over here. But the hamstring attaches to the fibular head and the outer tibia, and then the IT band is right above that on the outer portion of the tibia. So if you think about it, and you really want to get technical, this bothers a lot of the glute people because they can't understand it. The force of the glute max, if you actually follow where where the IT band anchors, is below the knee. So technically speaking, glute max is a knee joint muscle.
Ooh.
We don't like that, but it's true. It's biarticular, the way, because like they love to use all the science words. It's like biarticular muscles. It's like, yeah, it crosses 2 joints. Congratulations on your terminology. But glute max, again, anchoring into the IT band below the knee. So it's a knee joint muscle. It's like you can't argue against that because it's true. But the other thing is that, again, I mentioned the myofascial spiral. It's a motor scheme. So glute max into quad, kind of crossing over the knee into the gastroc. So you have the hamstring, the glute max, the quad doing both extension actions together. But at the same time, the glute max pulling up on the IT band, anchoring into the knee, it's assisting that. So they work together perfectly. So I don't disagree that things like hip thrusts are good glute exercises. I don't disagree that kickback is a good glute exercise. But the glute max is most optimal, like most optimally functioning when it's functioning with the quad, with the hip and knee extension combined. So, like, you can give me all the, oh, but we tested it. It's like, cool, that's fine. I'm talking about how it actually functions. It functions most optimally with glute and quad together. That's the best function. Now, somebody might get better growth with a kickback. Somebody might get better growth with a hip thrust. Somebody might get better growth with an RDL. And that's fine. But human functioning, the most optimal is quad glute together. So that's your squats, your step ups, your lunges, all that stuff. They'll tend to have better glute overall than the others will, but it comes at the price with also working your quads.
Yeah.
So for if the argument is I want to build my glutes without my quads, then a lot of these exercises become much lower tier.
So like for instance, someone who's like a bikini athlete and can't have
Yeah.
the quads.
Or somebody who like if you're a magazine model and you need some shape here, but you don't want thicker legs.
Right.
Then now you're going to do your more like your kickback style moves. The hip thrust still works for that because it's not huge on the thigh muscles, but unfortunately you'd have to drop a lot of these. But even an RDL, if you're doing it correctly, is going to be either the quad or the ham. And the reason I say it is because people define RDL differently. Depends on who you're talking to. Some people seem to define an RDL like a deadlift that you just don't touch the ground. Other people define it as a pre-bent hip hinge versus like a stiff leg would look more like this, and then an RDL would look more like this. And then some people, the difference is a deadlift comes from the floor, and an RDL is the exact same motion, you just don't touch the floor. So it's like, it's either deadlift without touching the floor is a category, or it's a bent knee hip extension that doesn't change knee angle during it. But there's two different descriptions I've seen for what an RDL really means. But in either case, regardless of which one you're doing, you're gonna get thigh muscle activation because it's impossible not to. So when you wanna narrow down the glute to like essentially no thigh muscle, hip thrust is good for that, kickbacks are good for that, and then like abduction style moves for the glute med, or other, it really.
So stuff that's a little bit more like isolation.
There's not a whole lot
or
you can do.
accessory type.
Well, I guess to simplify it, there are very minimal functions that the thigh muscles aren't participating to a large degree. Hip thrust is one where it seems to suppress almost all of them. Kickback, kind of the same thing, because when you're here, your hamstring can't pull any further back.
Yeah.
So kicking back has to be glute only. But outside of that, the glute cannot function on the hip without either the hamstring or the quad. So if you, to simplify it, if your knee is extending while your hip is extending, it's glute and quad. If your knee is not extending and your hip is extending, it's hamstring and quad, or hamstring and glute, sorry. And for anybody who's saying like, oh no, the hamstring's too short to contract, it's like, that's not true. Hamstrings have a huge contractile range. And like I think we showed on the last video, if I was doing something like this is still a huge amount of hamstring.
Yeah.
And just because my knee is bent, like that's the other thing. If you actually know the anatomy, the hamstring doesn't actually change length that much with knee length changes because one of the attachments is here. So like how much is it actually shortening? You can see how much my finger moves compared to my femur.
Right.
You're not actually getting a lot of muscle length change on the like by knee flexion. Most of the length change happens at the
Coming
hips.
from the hips.
Yeah. So if your knee is bent, it's like, okay, cool, you shortened it from here to here. It's like, does that really make a difference? But the glute or the hip is shortening here to here. So if you bend your knee and then it doesn't extend during the movement, then the hamstring is moving the hip. If it extends during the movement, then the glute and the quad are moving hip and knee more independently. But the glute is never working absent both quad and hamstring. It has to be one or the other. No matter what.
That's a really good way to separate that.
Yeah, with the only real exception is hyperextending because the hamstring can't do that. Because even a hip thrust has a little bit of quad, it has a little bit of hamstring, it has a little bit of adductor. Well, that's the other one. Adductor can't be eliminated also. If your hip extends, your adductor magnet has to be participating. Come on, man, you're being nitpicky. You know what he meant. It's Weird, he didn't say what he meant. So there's not a ton to cue on this. I think we went over the same thing last time. The big things are just making sure your stability variables are where we want them to be. So you don't need to do the earth separation because we're not focused on the IT band as much. The hamstrings are going to dominate this no matter what. I don't even know if the earth, like separating the earth cue would work here. It doesn't really seem like the right type of action. Is it? Can you do it here or no? I guess you could.
I can, yeah.
Does it feel like it changes anything?
No, not really.
And again, because glute max is secondary in this movement. I would actually argue too the glute maxes would be tertiary if you want to go that far, because the hamstrings collectively would work first, but the adductor magnus would be in line with them, so that would work second. So technically speaking, if you want to go by the muscle count, the glute max I would rank it 5th in an RDL, because you have 3 hamstrings: semimembranosus, semitendinosus, biceps femoris, and then adductor magnus would be, in my opinion, the 4th most dominant, and then glute max. And if you want the no context added scientific description, I would say it's because the class 1 lever system of the glute max and the adductor as a collective of 4 versus 1 is better against the class 3 lever system of the glute max. So 4 versus 1, they dominate. Class 1 versus class 3, they dominate. But I can add more description to that, but that's my scientific argument.
Okay.
And if somebody's like, I don't know what you mean, it's like, correct. This is the kind of conversation that if you want to have, you need to know the anatomy, the physiology, and the biomechanics to argue with me. You can if you want, but just make sure you bring the right info.
Do you have like a simple analogy that you could use to kind of give a sense for people who don't like carry that wealth of information that you carry?
Yeah, I can. So picture a seesaw. So the hamstrings and the adductor magnus are like, there's somebody sitting on that side of the seesaw, and the other side is above our head, and they're heavier than I am. So I can grab that and I can't pull it down. So you come over and you grab on and we both pull it down. You and I are the hamstrings and the adductor pulling the thing down to move the other side up. The glute is like basically like reaching over the top and trying to pull this way, but it's not pulling the leg up. It's trying to pull the whole body around the top. So the glute is hanging over the ledge, pulling this way to pull everything behind it over the top.
Got you.
It's just mechanically less advantageous.
Yeah.
And again, it's only 1 muscle versus 3. The other thing is, think about the line, the vector of the resistance versus the force vector. So the weight is pulling you this way.
Yeah.
So the resistance is being countered by the posterior chain line, which from the ground reaction up is where we have to start, is your heel. So it's the gastroc and the soleus. Gastroc soleus transfers straight into the hamstring. Hamstring then goes into the glute. But again, the glute is attaching on the outer portion, so it's not perfectly in line, and it's also higher than the hamstrings. So in order from ground reaction force, you get gastroc, then hamstring, and adductor. So they're first in line from ground reaction, and they're in line, more in line with the resistance profile. And again, there's more muscles. They have a better mechanical advantage based on the lever system orientation. So I would just argue that physics and biomechanics, which are technically the same thing, overlap, and the anatomy suggests that the hamstrings and adductor would be dominant on RDL stiff leg deadlifts. Glutes are participating in the same way that like you do bench press for chest and your front delts work.
Right.
But we don't do bench press, be like, oh, it's delt day, I'm bench pressing.
Right.
So the same thing, it's like, it's glute day. I wouldn't prioritize this as a glute day, but if it's glute ham day, perfect. If it's glute quad day, this doesn't fit.
Right.
But glute ham day, fantastic, which is why I think it's good to do, to include a little bit of both. So I think you should split your glute and ham days. Or sorry, I think you should split your quad and ham days.
Right.
And then glute is hit on both. And I would argue if you're somebody who can grow your legs and wants to, then quad day, ham day, accessory glute day. And if you're somebody who can't grow thighs because of your bikini fit model or some other, whatever your reason is, then you're going to be repeating a lot of the other actions. This will end up being one of them. And you get to do that too because for most people, the hamstrings aren't going to be hanging out, like falling out of you. That really only happens on bodybuilders.
Yeah, that doesn't just happen to you.
Yeah.
You have to work really hard for that.
Like nobody's getting a huge hanging hamstring by accident. Like, oh man, I was just out there doing my ham curls and the next day my hamstrings were gigantic. Like, they grow, but they're not going to grow so exponentially over the glute if you're not just doing ham all the time.
Right. So one of the things that I'm getting from this, or that's coming through really loud and clear, is knowing specifically what your goal is. Like what specifically do you want to grow? How specifically do you want to grow so that you can use proper exercise selection to get to your goals? It's not just following whatever influencer or following whatever you're seeing on social media. You can get a lot of information from that, but these people are training themselves for their own goals, or they're training their clients for their clients' goals that might not be specific to yours or to your body.
And part of that too is like your goal is obviously it's the most important. I want to grow X, Y, Z. So then maybe you end up online looking for some influencer education, which is fine. There's plenty of that's available that's worth seeing. But let's say you're like, I want to train my glutes but not my legs. And then you have an influencer who's like, do this exercise because it's glute without legs. Is that enough for you?
Right.
Just saying like it is because I said so. Like what I'm trying to do here is explain how each of these exercises is actually contributing. So it's like, I want glutes without hamstrings. Like, then you shouldn't do this because this is hamstring first.
Right.
And if you want glutes without ham, then you have to do either pressing actions to add quad, or you have to limit it to hip thrust and kickback because those are the only two that really effectively eliminate the bulk of thigh musculature activation. I would say the kickback is the one that is the most dominant in glute only,
right.
But like the ceiling for growth on a kickback is not particularly high. Ceiling for growth on squats and like leg presses is enormous, but ceiling for growth for your quads is also now much higher.
Right.
So it's like, this is where we start weighing the options. What are you looking for? If you want quad, glute, and ham, then in my opinion, 3 days. Quad day, ham day, accessory glute day. Because you'll hit glutes on quad, you'll hit glutes on ham, and then you hit glutes again on your 3rd day.
That's where you can do more of like your detail work and stuff like that.
Yeah, the stuff that you don't do on the other 2 days. Because like you would do squat and like hip press and leg press on your quad glute day, and you would do RDL and reverse hyper on your ham glute day. But then, okay, where does hip thrust land? On the accessory day, because it's neither quad nor ham. Your kickbacks on the accessory day, your abductors on the accessory day, because they're not specific to either one of the other muscle groups.
Which is another great way too of making sure you're not in the gym for way longer than you should be.
Yeah.
Killing your gains that way.
Yeah, and then like your quad day doesn't affect heavily your hamstrings.
Right.
So they can go back and forth. You could probably, I mean, in theory, you could put them back-to-back days if you really wanted to.
Which lots of wellness competitors do, actually.
Yeah, but that could be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing too. And then on that one, you would just pick your most fatiguing day for Friday because then you have the 2-day gap before the next one.
All right, let's hit this next set.
Mechanic, the one that was he did the Michael Jackson on the stiff leg or RDL. I think he was doing it on this one because he and this other kid, the other guy's Tim. He calls himself Tim 1%ers, and it's like PCTRS. They both have this repetitive nature of stupid cues for RDLs that don't make any sense anatomically, and they don't explain them. They're just like, go on your toes. The one guy says, go on your toes. It's called the crane effect. It makes your glutes activate, but doesn't explain how pushing your foot down would make the muscle at your hip change. But that's where we are. Oh, and I came up with a name for my project. Did I tell you? 'Cause I'll wait until you're done, then I'll tell you. But yeah, so heel and foot pressure, heel, foot, midfoot, toe, whatever you want. This is one of those things where it's more about your balance and your stability than anything else. So if you feel comfortable, balanced, and anchored on your heels, that's great. If you feel more comfortable, balanced, and anchored on your midfoot or forefoot, that's also great.
I do find that cueing myself to drive through my heels really helps me in getting more from my hamstrings, like more of that understanding from my hamstrings.
I agree.
But that is also because I have a tendency to have my body weight forward. So I
Yeah.
have to remind myself to go into my heels because that's not what I normally do. So that's like, I don't want to say like an abnormality or whatever, but it is actually something that I'm trying to correct in my physique coming from my anterior pelvic toe. So that might not be the same for everybody, but it is something that does help me get my hamstrings to understand that they're the ones driving the movement.
Yeah, the foot pressure cueing, I think, has a lot less, it's moving the needle a lot less than influencers want you to think. Because the primary mechanic is happening at the hips.
Yeah.
The secondary mechanic is happening at the knee. Because those are the ones that are affecting, like obviously if you're here, that's going to be a lot different than if you're here. So knee and hip matter the most. The ankle, number one, is not moving a lot, and the pressure you put on your foot is not changing the movement of the ankle. But so if I'm on my heel or I'm on my toe, like the movement you can see is not shifting. And how much is this little bit of a contraction going to affect the muscles above it? You can make an argument, but I just don't know if that argument's going to be making an effect that's worth having the conversation about, like, oh no, argument, heels to toes. It's like, which one works for you? I like it better on my heels. Great, do that.
Yeah.
It's back to the example of like, which rep count is better? Which one do you like? I like 5x5. Fantastic. Then do 5x5. I like 3x10. That's good too. Neither are better than the other, because maybe in the research one shows to be 2% better, 5% better, but your mind is like,
Right.
I don't like that one. That could be 10% worse. So I think a lot of the online situation is focusing on the wrong variables. It was a phrase I learned a while ago, majoring in the minor, but minoring in the major. So it's like there's a handful of details that'll accumulate like 80 to 90% of everything that you do. And then the last 10% is like 100 different things. And it's like so many people are focused on the 100 different things to do the 10% versus the 4 different things that do 90%. Because the biggest things that matter in bodybuilding, obviously there's program design and stuff like that, but like you have to show up and be consistent. If you're not consistent, none of it matters. You have to show up and work hard. If you don't work hard, none of it matters. So like those are two consistent variables. The other obvious one is that if you're trying to make muscles grow, you have to do resistance training. There's no alternative to that. So it's like you do resistance training, sets and reps to a high level of intensity or effort consistently over time. And then the final variables that are outside of that are proper nourishment and then proper recovery.
Yeah.
So there are 5 variables that'll move the needle 90%. The last bit is like, how do you program it? Do you do legs 3 times a week or twice a week? It's like these things are probably not going to shift that 90% that much more.
That probably depends a lot more on the specific person.
Yeah,
too.
and assuming you're working with somebody competent. Obviously, like if your program design is really awful, that knocks everything.
Yeah.
But like, let's be real. Nobody's out here like, oh, it's leg day, I'm going to do bench press. So, just
Except the people who skip legs.
yeah. Except Dom Mazzetti from his YouTube channel, but he's funny. But yeah, like people are doing bench press and flies for chest. You're doing shoulder press, lateral raise, front raise, rear flies for shoulders. We're doing squats, step ups, leg press, stuff like that, leg extensions for quads and glutes. It's like mostly everybody's doing mostly the same stuff. What's the difference? The effort, consistency, the nutrition, the recovery, those are the details that are really making the difference. And it's like, though everybody's doing mostly the same exercises. How are you doing them makes the difference. But those conversations are not popular on social media because
They're not clickbait.
It's not rage bait.
What?
Do this one cue to 10x your glute growth, and it's just an RDL, and it's like instead of being on your heel, you put a little bit of pressure on your toe. Yeah, okay.
Slightly rotate your toes.
Yeah. Or another one I love is this discussion on the mind-muscle connection. I'm not disagreeing with intention, but this whole thing about mind-muscle connection is a very funny debate. Because if I told you to pick something up off the floor just haphazardly, then you'll end up doing it in a way that ends up being primarily energy efficient because your body prioritizes that. But if I told you to do it in a different way, like the way we're doing this, RDL, now you're more intentional with the movement. So you've generated a different purpose of what you wanted the output. That's what they're talking about is, quote, mind-muscle connection, is just being more intentional. So, because the mind-muscle connection debate gives the impression that they're like, I'm connecting to the hamstrings and making the hamstrings do the work. It's like, really what you're doing is just being more focused about your hip extension. Because you're not thinking about contracting muscles, you're thinking about joints moving. You're trying to extend your hip. You're not trying to squeeze the hamstring. Because if you did, it still wouldn't matter. We've all seen Terry Crews do the pec pop. Did that move his shoulder joint? Absolutely not. It increased the activation of the pec major, but it didn't move his shoulder joint because there was no movement intention. So contracting muscles absent of joint movement intention is not worth anything. At least in the sense of perspective of muscle growth. And that's why we're here. For muscle growth.
From like the somatic healing background as well. It's like even what I'm doing in the gym with my intentional movement, there's a lot of threads connecting that and what I'm doing to get into my body for somatic healing, right? And also, they're very different.
Right. But
like that intention piece, like that's something, and we've talked about this before too, is like priming, like there are little minuscule ways that your body starts priming itself for the intended movement.
Yeah.
That happen like we'll call it like pre-movement.
Right.
And those are the types of things that we track our clients with in somatic healing. So having that intention, that focus, your body's gonna start moving in a specific way to achieve that specific task.
And again, the way that we generate the movements that we want is exactly that. It's the intention. So, because like the mind-muscle connection debate, again, it gives the impression that you're like, ooh, I want to like squeeze my bicep and the brachialis. It's like, you're not choosing that. You're just saying flex the elbow. USA's.
Let's go, Charles. Pro card.
Big boys. He was 260 the other day.
Shit. Gosh, sometimes I wish I was a dude. I just want to be huge.
Ha.
These are also new shoes, so I'm filling out their grip right now.
How do you feel with that?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so this one is deliberately like very long muscle, but not a particularly large range of motion. but we don't always need maximum range of motion in every single exercise. So if you think about where your thigh ends, range of motion wise, where you are there, would you agree that in body positioning only, hip joint angle only, you're finishing here where you were on the leg press?
It feels like it, yeah.
So this,
like my glutes feel like they get a full like stretch.
so yeah, so you're going like full length, full stretch into where you were on the press.
Yeah.
From the press, you go there further down, and then you don't finish that, and that's where in a full week of exercise you would end up doing a kickback or a hip thrust to finish. So the other way to look at it is, right now you're pushing a weight away from you. The first one we did, you're pushing the weight down into the ground. And then the hip thrust, you're pushing the weight behind you.
Okay.
So the glute max has the ability to move the hip joint to a huge degree, because the hip joint range of motion is enormous. And the glute max has a solid amount of control over the entirety of that hip extension movement pattern. So the first, give or take, third of it, your thigh is actually moving the resistance away from your body. The second third of it, your thigh is moving the resistance below your body. And the third portion is your thigh pushing the resistance behind your body. So it's like, I agree that this is a short range of motion, but we do it deliberately.
That was interesting. I got like a whole visual of breaking each part of the movement down.
Yeah.
When you
You're
said that.
here to here, and then like to like try to simplify it in the air, right? So like right now what you're doing is from here to about here. And then your squat is going to get you, or your lunge is going to get you where you finish that from here to about here, under good resistance, because then that last bit isn't really resisted well.
Right.
So when you're here, that final part is either going to be your kickback or your hip thrust or your end range movements. So it's
that's where you really get to that like ball, that like glute ball.
And this isn't an original idea. This has been at least from the 80s or beyond. Steve Holman was writing about it in Ironman magazine. He called it positions of flexion. And it's a brilliant notion of, think about whatever your target muscle is. Pick a target muscle. That target muscle works at least one joint. So how far can that target muscle move that joint? In most cases, the movement pattern of that joint from that muscle is too big for one exercise. So you split it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if I'm here, obviously it's not only glute, but since we're looking at glute can push my leg this way, it can push it this way, and it can push this way. Can I get that whole range of motion with one move? Not efficiently, because maybe you have one of those machines where it has that thing that loops around. But if you're familiar with muscle physiology, you'll tend to be a little bit weaker when it's full length, tend to be a little bit stronger in that mid portion, and you'll tend to be a little bit weaker at the end. So that means the resistance has to be variable.
Your resistance wouldn't match.
It has to be variable in its direction and variable in its force.
Yeah.
Or in its quantity. So it's like lighter and moving away from you, heavier and moving down below you, lighter and moving behind you, in theory. Obviously, there's some nuance.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because like a hip thrust tends to be really strong,
Yeah.
but you get the idea. There's variable resistance angles in comparison to your body, and variable resistance quantity in comparison to the range of motion and how strong you are through it. So you'll be more efficient at one part of the range for force output, so make that one heavier. Great. So in most cases, we divide it in three: a lengthen range, a neutral range, and a shorten range. And the idea is the lengthen range on, like for this, is from your knee to your chest. The neutral is that the muscle's not ever really getting full stretch, and it's not really ever getting full contraction. It ends up halfway between.
Right.
And then the last one, you're going to get that full hard contraction, but you're nowhere near lengthening it.
Yeah.
So most of them you can split in three. The hamstring ends up splitting in two different ways, but because you'll get like a lengthened to like neutral from the RDL, then you'll get like neutral to shorten with the reverse hyper, and then you'll get lengthened to neutral with the curl, and then you get neutral to shorten with the curl. So each muscle, depending on what it is, a little bit nuanced, but the idea is that there's probably the only muscle that can do full range of its capacity of its joint is the calf. So like if you do a calf raise with your foot, your heel below your toe, and then all the way up, that's the absolute full range that the calf can control the ankle, and you don't need any other ankle position or range of motion. You would just, if you want to, bend your knee to prioritize a little bit more of the soleus.
Yeah.
But that's the only one I can think of where it's like you're gonna get your full range in one move. And again, you'll notice that when I talk about it, I talk about the glute moving the hip joint with the knee joint extending also.
Right.
I don't consider the glute in the RDL. I look at that as hamstring dominant.
So your glutes more of the secondary, or
Yeah.
even you were saying even
Yeah,
further back.
even further. But it's the same thing. Like most people who, if you do a flat bench press, you probably consider your flat bench in your deltoid routine. At least consider it. You might not change anything, but you're aware, like, oh, this
That this
exercise
is-
is
yeah.
also hitting my delts. Same thing, like RDL. This exercise is also hitting my glutes. It's not the dominant focus, but you have to be aware of that when you do program design.
Shoes slide a little bit.
Which brand is this? It's not No Bull, right?
No, my hip is like weird. They're born primitive. Oh, my shoe's sliding to the top.
Yeah, when you said that, it was like, all right, you gotta pay more attention.
Yeah, this hip just got stiff on me.
What's the most unattractive thing to you?
I didn't hear you, sorry.
What's the most unattractive thing to you?
In the gym.
At the gym, people not being courteous. And we just watched it happen. This person just left 6 plates on the hip press over here. Ah,
Unforgivable. Unforgivable.
it's terrible.
You're out. You're out of here.
For example, if I did this, what would you say? Rotator cuff? Rotator cuff?
Sorry, I can't stay on track right now, but you just reminded me that I saw a machine that's actually designed for that at that one
That's good, though.
gym. I was
But,
like,
like-
I've never seen this before.
But like, would you agree that if you saw me doing this with a cable, or doing this with a dumbbell,
That's
or
what I
like
would assume you're doing.
side lying,
Yeah.
you're gonna say, oh, you're gonna look at me and say, oh, he's doing rotator cuff.
Yeah.
But then if I do this, you're gonna, not you, but somebody's gonna say I'm doing glute max. But here's the thing, there's only 2 muscles that externally rotate. There's only 1 muscle that internally rotates from the perspective of rotator cuff.
Yeah.
There are 6 muscles that externally rotate the hip.
So
So
you're
if,
gonna
if we
pinpoint
do
one.
this, rotator cuff. If I do this with 6, glute max. Come on. Because they're like, oh, but what muscles do? And the same thing, if I go this way, subscap is the one rotator cuff that pulls in. But front delt, pec major, and lat also do intern rotation moments. But we don't prioritize that. We don't look at it like, oh, I'm training my pec major, training my lat, right? It's subscap. So here, now you're doing external rotation, definitely glute. None of the 6 muscles that are named specifically for that action, it's got to be the glute.
That's really interesting.
That one I can't understand, because why? And like I always try to bring it into as if muscles were like real people. Like imagine we're having a tug of war, and 6 people are pulling the rope, and the glute is busy pulling the extension rope, and now you want to add external rotation, which has 6 people to do that, and the glute max is gonna be like, no, I'm working on extension, but I will also handle this for you. Even though there are 6 of you who do this explicitly and don't do anything else, I'll do both actions.
I got this, guys.
Because this creator wants me to do both actions. It's funny, one of the creators told on himself and shared a bunch of research. It was a bunch of papers showing that if you paralyzed, like for example, you put a nerve block on the inferior gluteal nerve, which controls the glute max. If you did a nerve block on that nerve, people could still stand up from their chairs. They could still climb stairs. They could still walk, which proves that the glute max, if it's not working, other muscles can do the job, which debunks a lot of his thing because he talks a lot about glute does extension and abduction and external rotation. He's like, but when you paralyze it, everybody still works. So I don't think he realized that was an argument kind of against his own content.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just big of him to, go ahead and do that. Put some real info out, or honest info.
Yeah, it's funny when they put honest info out, like for the perspective of like, ooh, I'm going to be honest, and then don't realize that their honesty argues against their dogma that their whole account is based on. But I said it before and I still didn't bring it back up. I came up with a name for my content plan.
Oh yeah.
We're going to call it the influencer audit.
I love that.
Because I want it to be perceived as being objective, because it is. I'm not coming out swinging saying like this person's wrong because I think so, or I don't like this person. It's more about like, let's look at the body of work that they're offering us and let's digest it objectively and determine if they are the expert that we are perceiving them as.
Right.
So it's like if you're a perceived expert and I go on and I find out that you've never had a single formal education course, I'm not saying that you don't know what you're talking about, but that's not a good start.
Right.
And then from there, your argument is like, oh, but I read and listen to, I read a lot of research. And then we look at all your content, and every time you share research, you misinterpret it. Not a good start. So it's like you don't have formal education and you misinterpret research. Where are you learning this stuff from? Because you didn't learn it from formal education and you're getting it wrong from the research. So why are people trusting you? Just the audit.
Yeah, I think audit's the perfect word.
Yeah, because like, is this person saying what the research is saying? Yes or no? Like kind of like this part, yeah. Because this one's even weird. This one doesn't have handles on the seat. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Ours has handles on the seat. I come into this gym and I just talk badly about it. How rude. I actually didn't talk bad. People asked me when I went here the first time with you, like, oh, what'd you think of it? Like, it's pretty cool. It was, at the time, it was right before Flex got the new equipment. I was like, the back room was way overcrowded. Like this area over here was a mess last time I was here, where the ham curl was.
Oh yeah.
All the machines were like on top of each other. But I think that was the week right before he got the new equipment, so fair enough.
Yeah, this gym has like really come a long way with the equipment. And it's honestly like it's never too crowded in here as far as people go.
It was funny, last week when I was here,
Except when we have seminars.
last week when I was here, everybody said it was more crowded than they were used to. And I was looking around, I was like, it doesn't seem that busy. They're like, it's busier than normal. I was like, well, that's interesting because it doesn't seem that bad.
I'm like, good for you guys.
Yeah.
It's not too crazy.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I'm gonna stick with that.
I think Stu has the exact same one, also in red, the hack squat.
This one?
Yeah, at Ovox. It looks, I can't tell if it's exactly the same one, but it's got to be close.
I'm not familiar with this brand.
Skeletor. Do you think Skeletor is in reference to skeleton?
This makes me think of Fat Face.
Yeah, like I thought Skeletor, like the villain
Yeah,
from
that's what,
He-Man.
that's what it makes me think. That I feel like I should be the face of this machine right now. Which, by the way, one of my I like getting like graphic tees with cartoons and shit for when I get my competition tan.
Oh yeah.
So one of mine is Masters of the Universe. So I actually have Skeletor on
Perfect.
my fucking on my shirt that I'm wearing
Perfect.
backstage.
Because then you make the joke. Somebody's got to make the joke like, "Hey, you wear a T-shirt of yourself."
Absolutely.
That's
all
arrogant.
day, baby.
The arrogance to put yourself on a T-shirt. You're like, "What do you mean? That's Skeletor." Oh, sorry, I thought that was you.
Yeah, now I just need like a Grim Reaper or something, and I'm there. I should get like the Billy and Mandy Grim Reaper one so I can keep it cartoon.
Oh yeah, the cartoon things. But yeah, it's all about the shirts, like this one.
It's all about the things that get you through it. What's gonna give you that little spark of energy, or put that smile on your face, or that little bit of like comfort when you're struggling? And for me, that's big oversized tees with cartoons on them.
Yeah, and then
Star Wars.
Oh, I was gonna say it's that and TV shows from the '80s,
Oh hell yeah!
particularly murder mystery TV shows from the '80s.
mysteries. My Murder She Wrote, Matlock.
Did you ever watch Columbo?
Oh hell yeah! I still do.
Because it's you, yeah. You and my dad have the same TV show interest. Columbo, Matlock.
So I'm an
he
OG,
used to
triple OG.
He watched Perry Mason.
I watched Barry Mason.
I remember you sent me the video of the gym guy from it was
From
Matlock.
Matlock. Oh my god, yeah, they have a couple episodes where he's like, oh, like why did we do this in a gym, guys? Why?
You want to hear something really funny about Matlock? My dad watched that show, so like I grew up seeing it, and also very popular was the Andy Griffith show.
Yeah.
Do you realize or like how crazy it is that I didn't recognize that Andy Griffith was Matlock until like 6 years ago?
Damn, seriously?
Like I grew up seeing Matlock all the time, and I knew about the Andy Griffith show. I knew who he was.
Yeah.
But I only knew him as a young actor, and then I only ever saw him in Matlock, which he was obviously much older. It took me so long to finally pinpoint. It was like, oh my God, that's Andy Griffith. That's how embarrassing.
He brought so many people from the Andy Griffith show onto Matlock too.
The Andy Griffith show was like that perfect like teach your kids morals TV show.
100%.
Yeah, he was like Mr. Rogers, but from a sitcom perspective.
And they tackled tough issues too.
That was what I loved about the Golden Girls.
I feel the same way about the Twilight Zone. Like they tackled really tough issues, especially for the time, and like handled it well.
Yeah, Golden Girls did the same thing. The first episode, the pilot episode of Golden Girls, they have a gay live-in
Right.
like cook or something.
Or like Blanche's daughter
Yeah,
getting the sperm donation.
One of them had like an IVF style birth. Dorothy's young son married an older black woman,
Yeah.
and that was a big deal. Blanche's brother was gay. That was a big deal. Rose's best friend was gay and like had feelings for Rose, so that was a big deal. They tackled like a ton of heavy social issues, and always came out with it on the morally correct
Yeah,
side.
which
Like,
is why I can't forgive shows that did the other thing,
Yeah.
like I Love Lucy or MASH, where
'Cause,
it's like
like-
the first episode they're saying they're selling the nurses and saying
Awful.
very inappropriate things. Like I don't give a fuck about what time this happened in.
Right.
because other stuff happened at the same time and they didn't do that.
Because I don't know as much about the other shows, but with Golden Girls, I love that they would always have a character who started on one of their characters started on the wrong side.
Yeah.
So like when Blanche's brother was gay or when Blanche's daughter was getting IVF, she was the problem.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't agree with this. And it was like, ooh. And then by the end, she comes back and it was like, I was wrong. Like, I need to accept you for who you are. I was looking at it with a terrible perspective. I'm so sorry. It was like, all right, morals. We like that.
Yeah, and like someone coming to it too,
Yeah.
because we like to allow room for growth.
Yes.
And room for people to change. We
Yeah.
don't just assume they're always going to be that way.
Right.
Because they started out with
It
that
was
mindset.
it was somebody always learned the lesson and came around and recognized the correct morals
Yeah.
of the lesson. I love that stuff.
Now I gotta throw on some Golden Girls.
Golden Girls
That's
is the
like that's
business,
what I
man.
need. Yeah, let me get my good
I
feels.
love that show, and it's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Estelle Getty is so fucking funny.
It's been a while since I watched it too.
I mean, all of them are great because their personalities mesh perfectly. And Betty White is fucking America's sweetheart.
I'm Betty White.
I think we've talked about this. I put 3 people on the same list: Betty White, Dolly Parton, and then Jack Black.
Oh my god.
Because the third one is the one that throws everybody. Because like I look at them as quote America's sweethearts collectively. It's like they've never done anything wrong. They've only done things that are good for everybody. And it's like Betty White, Dolly Parton, Jack Black. In the spotlight since forever, but have never been in the spotlight for anything wrong.
For the wrong things, yeah.
And especially with Jack Black, with his whole thing was just making movies for kids. It's awesome. So we'll do a reverse hyper after this, and then that's it for the big stuff, right? Because the last thing would just be like a ham
Accessories,
yeah,
yeah.
like an extension. Which, how much cueing do you need and coaching do you need on a leg extension? The curl has a little bit, but we did that last time. Extension, I don't think there's any cues except stabilize. Grip the handles and stabilize your trunk. Has Charles gone yet? Do you know anybody who's there? Do you know anybody?
Ooh. This is where I'm feeling the boniness a lot.
And this pad is rock hard.
Yeah, and that's what's like going into my
it's not cushioning.
tender places.
Yeah. I tried it just to see how it felt, and I was like, I was like, this thing has no cushioning. And unfortunately, the primary cue for this one is the same as the ham curl. When you prioritize hamstrings, you want to drive this part as heavy into the pad as you can, because that's the anchor. You need your pelvis to be stable. So yeah, the way you stabilize your pelvis is by pulling hard from the top and locking in that way, and then pressing hard against your pelvis. And then from there, the other thing is to think you're trying to push your heels into it, like you're almost like you're trying to curl it. So like almost think like you're trying to curl your knees too. You physically can't because it's not designed that way, but that'll prioritize hamstring, like mind to muscle connection, as we like to say. And if I'm not mistaken, if you're into EMG readings, which don't tell you much, but some people love EMG readings. If I'm not mistaken, this one was among or was the highest EMG activation reading for hamstring exercises across the board.
Oh, that's dope.
It was this one or Nordic, I think were the top. I think Nordic exceeded, like excessively exceeded,
That makes sense.
Because they based that on what they call maximum voluntary isometric contraction.
Uh-huh.
So you're pressing against something that can't move with 100% effort, and that's your maximum voluntary isometric contraction. And then they read EMG percentages based off that. So like as much as you could possibly do is 100%, and then the Nordic curl is like 120%, which is really funny. Because like if this is your max effort activation, then you can't go higher than that. But it's
Kind of in the name.
yeah, it's maximum voluntary isometric contraction. So that's an eccentric, so it ends up reading higher. But it's funny because the Nordic shows up at like 120%.
Yeah.
I think this one was like right around 100%. And then RDL was a little bit lower. And then ham curls were also in that same range. But this, if I'm not mistaken, the research I read was this one was second to only the Nordic. But again, means nothing because EMG activation is a single variable in a huge set of variables, and when you take it alone, it means literally nothing. When you add it with everything else, you can get context, but with no context, it's kind of useless.
I actually haven't, like I've never done a session using the machines either.
Like the newbie?
Yeah.
So that's the opposite, yeah. EMG is how much electricity is your body putting to that area while you do it.
Versus something going in.
The newbie is putting electricity into you.
I kind of want to try it on like a, particularly something with my hamstrings
Yeah.
too. See.
It's not. It's also not like a new thing. Like if you watch Rocky IV, if you've ever seen Rocky IV, there's the scene where he's in like the barn and he's like lifting the fucking like the stuff in the barn and like chasing chickens, and then they go to Dolph Lundgren and he's in his big fancy very scientific equipment stuff, and there's guys with lab coats. At one point, I think he's doing a leg curl, and there's a little pad on his leg. They call it Russian stim. Russian stim and the newbie are the same. They're the same science, just utilized a little bit differently. The idea was back in the 70s and 80s in Russia, when they were doing everything they could to make their power lifters the best. They were doing steroids, they were doing electric stim, they were doing all this crazy shit, and they dominated powerlifting at the Olympics. So Russian stim is actually something we still use in rehab. It came from that, and the newbie got adopted from that also.
Okay.
The idea of adding external electric impulse to make the muscle contract beyond your conscious control of it, with the notion that more contraction, therefore more force, could withstand more resistance, greater tension equals more growth. It's a lot of proxy. And is it measured in reality?
That,
Tough to say.
the question that comes to me is that something that we would adapt to? So like having that external stimulation, will that then cause the muscles to start generating the same or similar or just increase?
So in the research from Russian stim, in the perspective of rehab, it was generally viewed that within 2 weeks, if you did it like 2 or 3 times a week, within 2 weeks you can't get any more benefit from it.
Oh,
So it does help increase your ability to stimulate more motor units or stimulate like greater force output, but its input will maybe jump you up for a week or two, and then you're there and you're not going to go any higher.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true with the newbie, but I tend to look at it from the perspective of who's doing the newbie. Is Andrew Jack on the newbie a lot? Is Hadi Chupin on the newbie a lot?
Right.
It was Chris Bumstead on the newbie a lot, and it's like the people who are the top bodybuilders from the perspective of success don't seem to use it a lot. And anecdote's not science, but anecdote carries a lot where science doesn't have its measurements. Anything that keeps this part locked in to the pad. And then the last one is as if you're trying to bend your knees a little bit, which you won't be able to do, but it's a helpful cue. You know how shows go. You do your first thing, right? First call out, individual, and then they bring you out. You do the routine, and then they do call outs for comparisons. So what they did was they put everybody out one time, all of us at the same time, quarter turns, poses, show's over. We know who won. One time.
Oh hell no.
For the finals, we came out and did our routines and then got rewarded medals. It was like, that's not finals, that's award ceremony.
Yeah.
Finals means you're still comparing. So all they did was a single call out prejudge, quarter turns, poses, we know who won. Yeah, again, there's nothing particularly nuanced about the leg extension except grab and pull. Because again, if you can engage your lats, then you can create that pathway through the glute fascia into the quad fascia. And does that make a huge difference? Maybe, probably not, but it's kind of the only cue that we have on this.
My left teardrop be cramping up.
To simplify it, if you don't hold the handles and pull, then when you extend, you'll stand up.
I feel I'm like,
Yeah.
I have a trainer who's always trying to tell me like, don't tense up your arms or other parts of your body because then your body thinks that you're training those muscles. Like, bro, if I don't, I'm gonna fall out the seat.
But that's also not how it works, because your brain is smart enough to recognize that everything is holding to generate stability, and this one's moving.
Yeah.
Your brain understands that and will coordinate that effort to make sure everything does what it needs to. I would argue it would always be better to stabilize everybody else, because then nothing else is moving.
Right.
Lack of mobility and tight stability means the whole system generates tension together. Because tension distributes through the entire fascial system, and there's in the average adult, there's anywhere between 20 and 25 pounds of this three-dimensional matrix. So it's like, yeah, if I just do this, sure, I'm only doing my calves, but that force is being transmitted all the way up and all the way through. So it's like, do I perceive it in my hands and in my face? No, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to those directions. So if we lock in everything and no other joint has the capability of moving, then force transmission is only going through the moving part.
Yeah.
And it's not being transmitted into stabilizing or creating tension on other parts of the environment that aren't stable. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I also feel very validated, so thank you.
Yeah. It always comes back to again, it's not always the right term by proximal, but proximal stability is the phrase that we use.
Okay.
You want to stabilize the environment before you move it. The only time you want instability is when your training goal is stability and balance. Then you don't use increased resistance, you use decreased stability.
You just reminded me of some shit I saw at EOS when I was doing my cardio the other day. No, it was just like the use of, like, they were trying to work stability and using a Bosu ball and some other shit for that, but doing it by the free weights. And it was the placement for me that I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
I get what you're doing. Totally get it. Totally fine. But maybe not by the free weights.
Maybe not around the area where there's the most moving parts.
Yeah, but it seems dangerous.
Like turf area, perfect.
Yeah, like we actually have a whole area designed for that, for yours and everyone else's safety.
Yeah.
Please don't hurt yourself out
Turf
here.
area is perfect for that. But yeah, if you're,
You know me.
I'm gonna loosen up my back and then I'm gonna do that pistol squat. Because the only reason I couldn't do it is because my back gave out. It was too tight. One of the playlists at Strength Culture is a bunch of Bay Area music.
I love that.
Nika keeps putting it on. So like hearing different layers of E40. There's a song that's not Blow the Whistle by fucking Too Short. It's like, oh, I know Too Short's voice. This isn't Blow the Whistle. How strange. Nobody ever plays his music unless it's Blow the Whistle, ever.
I don't understand why.
And E40, you only hear the same, like, Tell Me When to Go.
Yeah.
There's only like 2 or 3 that you hear from him either. But this playlist is different. So you see this vein?
Yeah.
So what that may suggest is that there was or is some sort of fascial densification.
And this is where I tend to cramp up too.
That like if the pathway of that vein was trying to go through here and the fascia got a little bit sticky, like the hyaluronin got too tight, it could cinch the blood vessel, and then it starts to pull up, and then it looks for a new way to go. So that like kind of varicose look.
Yeah.
A lot of time, one example of what that could be indicating is that the blood couldn't keep going, so it started to pool. It got heavy, and then the vein started to torque, and then it looks for a new pathway. So that's why it's kind of like squiggly, because it got heavy. It kind of lost its integrity a little bit, and it's looking for a way to get back.
So is that an area we need to work on?
It could be. So somewhere in here might be a densification that is holding back like the blood flow.
I was feeling like we need to do the psoas again. Let's go on the seated curl, and I'll tell you. That happened. My coach had me train legs the day after the show.
Yeah.
And I was doing a seated curl, and I felt like right about here there was kind of like a burning sensation when I was curling. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, is this related to that shit or the psoas?
So sartorius attaches there.
Okay.
And sartorius, if you're sitting, can have a more prominent vector for helping hip knee flexion.
Okay.
So if it was a seated curl and it hurt here, the first immediate direct connection could be the sartorius.
Okay.
Could be other stuff, but.
Well, that's something to look at when I'm done with Tampa.
And they're like, oh, one of the small girls.
Yeah, I know. I'm just a wee little thing.
Yeah, one of the small girls.
All the gyms I train at, yeah.
So you are somebody who experiences the same thing I do. We're in that gap where to gen pop, we're an outlier because we're freaks, too muscular, too conditioned. But then where you work out, where you exist, you're an outlier because everybody's bigger than you.
I'm just a little girl.
Because like I go to the beach, or I go to the beach in New Jersey. I go to pool clubs here. I walk the strip in a tank top. I look weird.
I've literally had people call you Tarzan to me.
I look different than everybody, and I'm an outlier in that. And then I go to work, and I work with fucking Craig Goliath, and he's 330 pounds. He weighs.
That's why I had to tell him you were gaining on him.
he weighs twice as much as me.
Oh, Craig.
So it's like I'm an outlier because I'm too big for Gen Pop, and then I go to work and where I work out, and I'm an outlier because I'm the smallest person in that gym by far.
The last person on this machine was my size.
I would say, is the seat good?
Yeah, it's like actually in the right spot.
Amazing. So you were feeling something here.
Yeah. I don't feel the burn, but I can tell you it was like right here.
So
it's a little lower than what I said.
Is it like right below the bone?
Yeah, the bone's like right here. So it's a little bit more in.
So the sartorius comes off right there.
Okay, so it's a little more in.
Okay. So if it's closer to the pubic bone, if it's closer to the pubic symphysis, the pubic bone is where the gracilis starts. And the gracilis also attaches
what
to
the fuck is that? I don't even know what that is.
So sartorius, gracilis, and semitendinosus of the hamstring all attach right here. Okay. It's called the pes anserine tendon insertion. In a flexed hip position, all three, in theory, could be assisting knee flexion. Gracilis is normally a hip adductor. Okay. Sartorius is normally like kind of this like hacky sack motion, but with the hip flex and the knee straight and the knee being the only priority movement, all three can, based on their position and their angle, all three can support pulling the knee back. So if you're feeling it, gracilis could be the trigger. It might be a densification that's binding, for example, like anterior adductor magnus and gracilis, or adductor longus, because there's gracilis, adductor magnus, adductor longus, adductor brevis, and a smaller muscle called the pyramidas. And all of them are right inside, like up in the inner thigh.
Okay, so you got some digging around to do then.
Sounds fun.
In some real tender places.
Yeah.
Fuck my life.
So on this one, you can actually see this the way where the sartorius pits. So watch how it's you see how it cinches
Yeah.
your adductor. So it's like that's visual proof that the sartorius is participating in this exercise. But the cues that I use for this one are like pushing, not just pushing yourself back, but I also think like imagine like you're trying to lift these up, like you're trying to grab the handles and pick them up off the ground, because then you're pushing your body down. Another thing I think is trying to drive your knees into the pad. So it's like you're trying to do hip flexion and shoulder flexion while doing knee flexion. A lot of flexion going on. But yeah, like driving the knee up does the hip flexors. But because you're not doing hip extension, it's not an antagonist for the hamstring.
Make that my last rep.
Oh, you're good?
I can't.
It's one of those where you have to push down to
you
pull
gotta
up.
force it.
They teach you that at the amusement park on the roller coasters. To release the shoulder harness, pull down before lifting up.
I want to go to an amusement park now.
You'll have to visit New Jersey one day.
It's been a long time.
Six Flags Great Adventures in New Jersey.
Ooh.
And
I love me a good Six Flags. I haven't been to a Great Adventure.
Great Adventure, and if you like roller coasters, Great Adventure has more roller coasters than any amusement park in the country. It's actually it's for sure the biggest theme park in the country. It might be the biggest theme park on earth, but it's definitely the biggest in the country.
Ah, I gotta go.
And they're like, what do you mean? It's bigger than Disney? It was like, yes, technically speaking, yes, that's my point. Because it combines the ride park with the safari park and the water park. And the cumulative total of all three is bigger than Disney.
That reminds me, my coach did tell me that if I can get Julian not to try to do tourist shit before the show, then he'll take us to Disney World.
I've never been to Disney World.
I haven't either. I went to Universal Orlando, but I didn't go to Disney World.
Were you there after Harry Potter was made?
Yeah, but they have, the way Florida did it is they have the Harry Potter stuff split into 3 different parts.
Oh.
So that you have to pay for each part to go.
Of course they do.
So I just went to Diagon Alley and I like fully cried.
Yeah, I was gonna say you lost it.
I fully cried and I still have my wand.